Caucus, we are meeting to talk about Metro's sexual harassment policy and ways that we might support making it more effective and user friendly is not exactly the word you want in that context, but just to make it more user sensitive. Let's use that word. Mr. Cooper, can you tell me if I need to be reading the electronic meeting statement? I see him there. Is that perhaps I need? Can you make Mr. Cooper a panelist? He is.
Maybe he stepped away for a moment.
Okay. Well, I will do a version of it, which is pursuant to the electronic meetings order, executive order of the governor. This meeting is necessary to meet virtually to protect the health and safety of those people, and so we need a motion to meet virtually. Do I have a motion? Thank you. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll come back and read the official.
Counselor's here.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna look real quickly and see if I've got everybody. I see Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Stiles, Councilmember Benedict, Councilmember Welsh, Councilmember Hauser. Let's see who else I see. Councilmember Toombs, Councilmember Van Rees, and Councilmember Hancock and Councilmember Saward. I thank y'all all for being here. And we have guests that have come to provide us with information and context, which I'm very grateful for. I want to recognize all of them, and then I will start in order. Let's see, let me recognize guests, and then I'll respond to a few hands that I see raised. So we have with us Diane Lance from the Mayor's Office of Family Safety, and I believe Shannon Hall is here from Metro HR, and we have been joined by Councilmember Sepulveda, and we have Natalie Loki and Kathy Morante from Metro Police, and we appreciate all of y'all being here. We'll recognize a few council members before we let our guests start the education process. So Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to let you know that the sound quality for you is not the best, and so everybody else sounds pretty clear, but yours sounds a little bit off. So I just wanted to give you a heads up in case people need you to repeat occasionally.
I will try plugging in my headset. We'll see if that makes it better. Thank you for letting me know that. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know you said we may come back to the motion. I don't know if we need to read the official word or if the paraphrasing works. If we need the official language, I do have that with me.
Great. Would you read that for us just to be safe?
Yes, ma'am. So it says, pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 65 regarding electronic meetings, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metropolitan Council and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak.
Great. Do we have a second? How's your mute? Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Suara. Okay. So with that, let me see if there are any other hands raised. Hold on. Trying to scroll. Okay. Seeing no other council members looking for recognition right now, what I would like to do is ask, I have allotted 10 minutes per department. So that would be 10 minutes for Metro Police, 10 minutes for HR, 10 minutes for the Office of Family Safety. I think we'll have a little bit of QA after each of those departments. And then rather than keep those people for 2.5 hours, we will send them on their way and then go to caucus discussion. Does that sound like a good plan for everybody? Seeing no hands in dissent, I'm going to assume that's a yes. So with that, I would like to recognize Chief Kay Loki and Director Kathy Morante, and I will hand y'all the mic for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll have some Q&A after that. And our hope is that you can tell us about our goal with this whole process is to get a better understanding of what the process in Metro is if someone feels that they have been a victim of sexual harassment or sexual assault. And I know that those are treated differently, so I think we need to acknowledge that. What are the current protocols that are put in place for them to try to stop the situation and to ensure that that a perpetrator is dealt with in an appropriate way. So I will start by saying that I think most of us know a little bit about this process now, but none of us are experts on what the current process is. And I'm hoping that as a group, if we can determine that there may be some holes in the process or what appear to be holes, that we can come up with some things that we want to advocate for in support of victims who may have felt like it was difficult to deal with a difficult situation and that the system is currently perhaps not set up to help them as best it could be. So that I believe that's I think that's our common goal. If anybody wants to make adjustments to that, jump in now, or I'm going to recognize Deputy Chief Loki and Director Morante, and I'll let y'all decide how you want to divide up the next 10 minutes. So thank you so much for being here.
Okay. Kathy, you want to start us off?
If you'd like me to, I can.
Okay, sure.
Or maybe I think you have a broader perspective than I do. So.
Okay, all right. So your question was, our policy is the same as the Metro policy about sexual harassment, discrimination, any Title VII claim. The individual has the right to put forth a complaint. And let's just start with a female officer. I'm a female officer and I have a complaint. I can take it to any supervisor. And if I'm not comfortable in taking that to any supervisor, then I can take it to the department's director of HR. I could take it to EEOC. I can even take it to the Metro government HR. So there's things in place that that are available to the individuals. A complaint is brought forth. Let's say that a complaint's brought forth to me. Then I will write up a memorandum, make sure that the chief has it, understands it. I'll pass it off to our human resource. We have 3 individuals in our HR department that have been trained by EEOC as well as Metro HR on how to handle and conduct investigations. Just recently, me and Kathy have joined up together, Ms. Morante, sorry. We've determined that we want to make sure that we are able to interview and determine facts to the best that we possibly can. And Ms. Morante runs our Office of Professional Accountability, and she has people in place that are very good at interviews. And also, we don't want a civilian from our HR department, let's say, that's investigating this, to have to sit down with, let's say, a lieutenant and ask them tough questions. So it's going to be a double effort from both the HR, which is under my umbrella as Administrative Service Bureau, and then with Ms. Morante and her group of individuals at OPA. So everything is in place. We have a manual. The manual specifically spells it out. Every officer is familiar with the manual because we're responsible to know everything in the manual. And as you get promoted, you're tested on these items. Sexual harassment is always a #1 issue. Every 2 years, we do training on sexual harassment in a safe workplace. But let me tell you what we've been doing in the last 3 months. Because of the allegations, and we know that there's a perception out there, we have created a dedicated phone line. The goal is for it to run 24/7 as best as that we can. We've got 3 people that are going to monitor the phone line. It's a phone number that we created, and it goes specifically to the police department's HR. we created posters that said, "Not on my watch." If you feel you're a victim of any Title VII infringements, then call this phone number and you'll get a chance to say your piece, and we'll bring forth an investigation. We've also done some things with our hiring process that, you know, we believe women are the future of police department. If you ask Chief Drake, he'll tell you that. So we're kind of revamping everything that we're doing to our hiring practices, how we train in the academy, how we train in the field. You know, we want problem solvers. We want people that are critical thinkers and that are empathetic, and that describes women. So I'm revamping how we actually hire, how we train, and then how we put people in the field. We want to model those examples. So I'm bringing in some training in a week. It's going to be the executive staff. We're going to talk about safe workplaces. We're going to talk about biases. We're going to talk about entitlement. It's an organization ran by women out of Orlando, Florida. It's a full day of training. We're also having Mr. Sean Foster from the WYMCA. Him and another individual are going to create a virtual training for our in-service next year on safe workplace and on how we treat each other and how we communicate with one another. I'm trying to hurry, Kathy. You want to put it in?
Sure. Yeah. So from my perspective, I'm the director of the Office of Professional Accountability, and I have 1 lieutenant and 9 detectives that are assigned to investigate complaints. Department-wide, we tend to do the more serious complaints. When it comes to sexual harassment and sex-related issues, we certainly do those. And the way that we get them can be from internally. If Deputy Chief Loki were to hear of something, or another officer, somebody from within the department can contact us, and that happens. We can get complaints, either walk-ins by phone or by the internet, from current, former employees or citizens. They can be anonymous. We investigate anonymous complaints quite often. And again, if it's a sexual complaint, related complaint, it may come from HR, and they might ask us to do it because, again, we have a staff of trained detectives who worked in other areas of the department before coming here and are very, very good at conducting investigations and interviews. And as Deputy Chief Loki said, I have selected one person in particular who is going to work closely with HR on EEOC and those kinds of cases so that we can work together. Just a couple more things I want to say about OPA before opening it up to any of your questions. The word transparency is one that's heard a lot, and I want to let you all know that compared to the vast, vast majorities of police departments in this country, our internal affairs, which is what OPA is transparent. We have 45 days from when we start an investigation to concluding it, and then we don't make recommendations as to punishment. We make a finding of whether any violations of policy were committed, and then it goes up to the command staff to do punishment. Once those 45 days are up, our internal affair records are open to the public. Anybody, any council member, any citizen can look at any single one of them to see what I think is real high quality work, investigations that are done. So I invite anybody to either randomly come and look at our files, or if there's a particular case that you were interested in. The last thing that I wanted to say, and then we'll, whatever questions I'm happy to answer, Deputy Chief Loki alluded to, we're all aware that these allegations are out there, and we do want to make the whole process easier for anybody to make allegations. I come from a background of being a prosecutor. I prosecuted sex offense cases. I feel very, very strongly about victims and the kind of representation they need. Having said that, when I hear in the press and in other publications or people from the council ask me, what are you doing on the 38 investigations that we've heard about? There aren't 38 investigations. Those victims may have come forward to a particular organization, but we have asked and not received the information to do any investigations on any of those, except for we had 3 that we were able to glean enough information to actually be able to investigate the charges that were made. And if we want to talk more about that, I'm happy to answer questions. But I just wanted to say that there is, I think, a misunderstanding that there are investigations going on when they're not, because we don't have any information to investigate. Thank you.
Thank you. That's I appreciate that clarification. That was a question that had come up. Can you talk a little bit about? My understanding is that some of this information was derived from a survey that was sent to officers, again, for this organization, as opposed to from victims going out and seeking that. And I'm not sure if that's a question for y'all or for someone else to answer, because that's.
Well, what I can say is that very early on, a few months ago, when the allegations first surfaced, they were referred by, I believe, the mayor's office to then Chief Anderson, who referred it to me. My investigator called Ms. McLean to get that information, had a fairly lengthy conversation with her, and said how much we wanted to investigate the allegations. And she said at the time that she was not prepared to do that. And we've exchanged emails a few times since then. We still stand ready to do an investigation. But all I know is that she told us that there were these surveys.
Thank you. That's helpful clarification. Other council members have questions. See one hand. Councilmember Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Morante, how many resources are actually dedicated during those 45 days for an investigation into a complaint like this? I mean, how much time is actually dedicated toward this? 45 days to me seems somewhat very fast, very quick, but I just wonder how much time is actually dedicated to investigating that allegation.
Yes, and I don't want to sound as if I'm saying this lightly, but I really do mean as much as is needed. So my investigators average 1 to 2 cases. That's their caseload, which is one of the reasons they can do really thorough investigations. And if we need to put more than 1 investigator on a case, we do, and we've done that before, so that during that time period, they spend their entire, working day working on that investigation. I will also say that while it's 45 days, and I do have the ability under the policy to ask the chief for additional time if there's a need. And I have done that on occasion. Frankly, I like to get it done when we can get it done in 45 days. If we need more time, we will do that. And I have done that on cases. But again, we're talking about an experienced detective who has 1, maybe 2 cases at the time. And quite frankly, you're not going to see a better ratio of investigators to cases anywhere in the department probably than that.
Thank you for that. Also, so do these investigators have the power to compel those accused and others around them to answer questions? So what kind of enforcement is there on that?
Yes, if the person is an employee of the department, whether a witness or an accused, they are compelled by the department to answer the questions and to answer truthfully. If they refuse to comply or we determine that they were untruthful, then it's an automatic termination. Now, we don't have the power to compel private citizens to come and talk to us, again, just employees. As a result of that, when there's a criminal case ongoing, for example, if the district attorney's office is also investigating it, or a criminal division, say the sex abuse division here, we keep a wall between us in terms of what our employee says to us, because they must answer the questions. And there's a case in the United States Supreme Court called Garrity. Because we essentially deny them the right to remain silent during our administrative review, that information cannot be used against them in a criminal case. So we're very, very careful not to do anything that would in any way harm a criminal prosecution. So we go ahead and we do our investigation at the same time that, say, the sex abuse division may be doing it, or in a case recently, or other cases, the TBI might be doing one.
Thank you very much. And I have one final question. In terms of the relatively recent past, say the last 5 years, in terms of these kind of allegations that have come before you that you've had to investigate, what has been the outcome of these investigations?
You know, I would like to say that I'll get you sort of the, more specific, because I don't have any numbers right in front of me right now. Officers have, for various levels of offense, have been lost rank, have been terminated, or had days. It just sort of depends on the particular case. And sometimes they're not sustained. If we operate under the civil service requirements, so that when we have a case, we have to determine whether there is evidence, a preponderance of evidence to support the allegation. And I'll be glad to get you a more complete reporting with numbers and all to all of you.
That would be great. Thank you. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report. I just wanted some clarification with regards to the disparity between what is being circulated and the cases that you have. I believe, Ms. Moranti, you said that you only have 3 cases that are being investigated. Is that correct?
Well, yes, let me clarify. I'm talking about from the silent no longer. I mean, we have more cases overall. Okay. And on a couple of those, it was just because, on 2 of them, it was because we were able to glean who the persons involved were by reading the context. And there were 2. One was, they're both captains. One involved an allegation of a inappropriate sexual email. We did an investigation into that. The employee, and it was a male-on-male situation, this particular one. That employee, that officer came in and said he'd never received any emails whatsoever from the captain as alleged in the silent no longer document at all. He never had any inappropriate contact whatsoever. There is an allegation of a commander of rape that's older, that happened some time ago. That happened out of state on a particular occasion. We have been able to determine that that is outright false. He, in fact, was working for the police department in Nashville at the time. The records are quite clear. There was another one, which was another captain, which we've just finished in the last couple of days, that alleged that a captain was having sex on duty with a female officer. We've been able to determine that he has been in a relationship with a female officer, but it never happened on duty, that the relationship is consensual, and that he's not her supervisor. Finally, as you all know, and just to clarify, there were allegations about Captain Reinbold regarding rape. That was referred, OPA did not investigate that. Metro HR did and had found it was unsubstantiated. It was turned over to the TBI at the beginning of this. Interim Chief Drake felt that that would be the best way to go. I understand that the TBI has completed that investigation, that it's been completed for at least some time now, and that those results are with General Funk. And I have no idea what those results are. And so if you want that information, information, you'd have to check with General Funk.
What I'm trying to figure out is that, and thank you for all of that information. What I'm trying to figure out is if, and it seems as if you're doing that, I wonder, and this is just me just thinking based on what you're telling us, that is it possible that some of the numbers that they have are in prior cases that's been before your office? Is it also possible that over the years that, let me put it this way, if somebody complained to a department head, does it always come to your office, or is it possible that the department head did not escalate it to your office? Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility that it might have happened in a precinct. I might let Deputy Chief Loki, she might know more on that than I would, if she wants to. It is possible. HR could have done an investigation and determined that they could make that decision without it coming to OPA. Again, the problem with the information, quite frankly, that we have from the organization is that it is so generalized as to be, and we're unable to figure out very much about it. So I can't really say whether somebody else in the department looked at it or not. Frankly, much of it, I think, is based on rumors that are not accurate. But I don't know for sure.
For sure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got just a couple of quick questions. One, Ms. Morante, does your team make mistakes?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the next question is, do you track or report what types of cases you've investigated regardless of outcome?
Yes.
So how many? Yeah. Pardon me?
We do an annual report.
Okay. Is that shared? Who is that shared with?
It's publicly available, but I'm happy to share that, with whoever.
I would appreciate if you share it with me. That'd be great. I think
Absolutely.
Perhaps the Women's Caucus might want that as well, but I know I would like it.
Yeah, I'll have that sent to everybody.
Yeah, Ms. Morante, if you send that to Roseanne Hayes, then Roseanne can disseminate it to all of us. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My last question, again, trying to be quick here. My last question is, if I make, hypothetical, I'm not an officer, but let's say I'm an officer. If I make a complaint against Deputy Chief Loki, hopefully I don't, Deputy Chief, right? But let's say, hypothetically, if I make a complaint against Deputy Chief Loki, and it turns out that my complaint was unfounded, do I go back to work in her department? What's the course of action that takes place? How am I, if it's not something particularly deceitful and saying, but if I say, hey, I feel like I was sexually harassed in the situation, and then it gets brought up, do I go back and work in her department directly?
I think that might be a better question for Chief Loki. I will say that in my experience, time, even before we've made a finding, if there is an allegation of sexual harassment, our HR department contacts the involved officer and asks if he or she wants to be in move to a different section. I'm not as familiar with that as Chief Loki, but I do know that happens as a matter of course.
Yeah, if there's an allegation, I think your question though was if it was unfounded, but I still have to go back and work with that individual. Is that correct?
Yeah. So again, maybe I have a misunderstanding, and I feel like you either discriminated against me in a sexual way, or in a racial way, or in a gender way, or in a any type of a way, and it turns out that I was incorrect, that I perhaps misinterpreted something. Yet I also still maybe felt afraid. I'm not sure how these things come out, right, during a process, but am I required to go back to my existing position, or am I transferred?
You would be required to.
I'm sorry. Did you say I would be? I'm sorry.
No, ma'am. You would not be required to. If I had an employee, and I haven't experienced this situation yet, but if I had an employee say, my complaint was unfounded, but I was not comfortable, I would make sure that I made the right steps that this employee would be comfortable. and that they would be placed somewhere, but they would have the option of going into another unit.
Thank you for that. Is that a policy or is that more of a judgment call by the leader?
It would probably be more of a judgment call. I don't know if our policy specifically speaks to that. I'd have to ask the HR director.
Okay. I appreciate you guys being here, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Councilmember Stiles.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ladies, it is very nice to see many of you I've worked with on separate occasions. My question goes back to Ms. Loki. You made a comment when you were discussing the process of interviewing, say, a senior staff person, a lieutenant or a captain. Why would a civilian not want to conduct that interview as well? Is there a reason why?
I'm not saying they wouldn't, but there may be an intimidation factor. We are very material, we have a ranked structure in place, and the civilians respect that ranked structure. So it would kind of be like deputy chief wanting to interview the chief. It might be a little awkward, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't or I couldn't. But I might go, hey, Kathy, could I have an investigator sit with me and assist me with this interview to make sure that everything is fair and that I ask the questions that I need to ask. So that was just an example that, we're just trying to cover all bases here.
So if they wanted to interview an individual on their own, they could.
Oh, yes.
They wouldn't be dissuaded from it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm just saying if the civilian investigator said, I know this captain, I know this lieutenant, I need somebody to help. I need somebody to maybe even do the interview.
And I'm going to put this out there in advance. Your process versus the Metro process, I'm interested to see how these two can align if they're not aligning already, just for a matter of simplicity within departments and reporting. So whenever Shannon shares, didn't hear the two.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
I lost you there. So you want to make sure they reflect each other because
it seems like, and many of us are learning about the processes right now, that departments have their own, some departments have their own process, then we have Metro HR and they have a process, and perhaps is there a way where we can have one process? Has that ever been discussed or thought about, where everyone's doing the same process and you don't have to talk to 75 people in a process? That's already daunting given its nature.
Okay, there are several policies that reflect Metro HR because they're civil service. Okay, so our policy does reflect Metro HR's policy as it comes to discrimination, workplace violence, anything to do with the Title VII. We do reflect them.
Thank you. And we'll talk about that more after we've heard from Shannon Hall's description of how it works at the Metro level. Thank you. Councilmember, are your questions, Councilmember Stiles?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hancock.
Thank you. I was just remembering to take my hand down so you don't call on me again later. I do appreciate both of you giving us your time today. And Ms. Morante, I really appreciate you talking to us about the 45 days and how that's flexible. In my district, I have a constituent that's a nanny, and she caught on camera a MMPD officer in Williamson County behaving poorly towards her and harassing her. And I know that that was dealt with in way less than 45 days.
Sure.
And I appreciate your ability to do that faster when you can, because if you already know the outcome, then it really helps the women that are feeling harassed and that have reported it. And this was a different situation than most of what we're talking about today, because she was not an MMPD herself. she's just, I mean, not just, but she's a citizen and living here and expecting respect in general. And it's just, she found out later he was an officer and just was appalled, and that's why she reported it. But what I'm hearing from, is it Deputy Chief Loki? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Well, first, I'd like to say congratulations, because I know you're the first female chief in over 10 years in MMPD, and it's a big year for women, so we really want to ring your bell and say congratulations for that. My best fascination with your career is when you were leading the domestic violence unit, so I know that you know a lot about this situation and really have the heart for it. So what I'm hearing, since there are so many, dozens of reports from women that aren't on your books, is that maybe these women weren't comfortable bringing them up. And maybe we need to do, sort of an internal PR campaign to help make that easier for the women to get them addressed, instead of being nervous or scared or, keeping it to themselves. It happens all over, not just here, in every industry, just in walks of life. People don't always want to talk about it, but maybe we need to focus on making them comfortable.
Let me share with you, over the last 2 months, I've been meeting with the female officers. My goal is to meet with every one of them. And we meet in about groups of 20. And I have 2 reasons for this. I'm trying to understand why they won't be promoted, why they won't get themselves in the testing process and get promoted up. And I'm finding out some really great information that I'm going to write up and share. And as a department, we need to do a better job with women, and we need women of rank, because that's how we're going to change the culture. The more women that come and work on this department, the better off we will be. But we've got to make sure that women feel comfortable and they feel safe. And that is my goal, meeting with them, is to open up any barriers that they might have. And I sit down in a group of them and I say, tell me what I need to know. Tell me what you want me to know. And if you don't want me to know, then write me an email later, and my assistant Vanessa's there. They often stay behind and talk to her. We need women to be comfortable, and they need to be confident. And hopefully these things we have in place and that we're going to continue to talk about and continue to do will give us that comfort.
Thank you. I need to move us along. This has been really helpful information. One last question before I move on to Shannon Hall. Can you speak a little bit to the duty to report? I mean, my understanding is that if an officer or if a Metro Police employee brings up an issue of discrimination or harassment to a supervisor or to a boss, that it has to go up from there, and that can be a disincentive. Can you speak to that very briefly, and then I'm going to move on to.
There's several ways they can file a complaint. It doesn't always have to go to their direct supervisor, and it doesn't always have to go up. They can go to OPA, they can go to the HR, they can go to Metro HR, or they can directly go to EEOC and file a complaint.
Thank you. And then, so can you clarify, if they go those other directions, then does that remove the duty to report that could be seen as I guess what I heard was that once you tell somebody, it becomes something official that's almost taken out of your hands, and that scares some people off. Is that a misunderstanding on my part?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I would say that my understanding of EEOC law and all of that sort of thing is, if a supervisor, whether they're in the police department or anywhere else, learns of sexual harassment or racial discrimination, they are bound. Even if someone says, hey, I just want to keep this among us, they have got to pass that on. And so I think that's the duty to report that maybe you're thinking of. So it is difficult. But you can't just say, hey, let me just talk with you female to female. If case your supervisor, and it turns out to be one of those things, it's got to be passed on.
Gotcha. And when you say passed on, where is it passed on to?
Well, it would be either HR or OPA if we're within the police
So
department.
it just goes to that, and then it gets investigated. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I'd been asked. Thank y'all so much. This has really been helpful, and we appreciate it's just good education to understand how that piece of it works. And now I would like to ask Shannon Hall if you can give us the Metro side of this, in as much as it's different and in as much as it's the same. And thank you for sticking with us to let us get that information out. So, Shannon?
Thank you, Council Lady Allen. I'm Shannon Hall. I'm the HR Director. Joining me also on the call is HR Assistant Director Mike Taylor as well. Hopefully some information that I shared when Councilmember Allen and Councilmember Stiles reached out to me last week has made its way to the Women's Caucus here. A lot of the procedures that have been described by Deputy Chief Loki and Ms. Morante are the police office versions within the confines of our civil service rules and policies, especially with regard to harassment and discrimination. So understand they are describing and they work within the constructs, the same general constructs that we have here at Metro HR for civil service and non-civil service employees. So they're just giving you a specific perspective for them. And as they both noted, and I wanted to say from the get-go, because I know we all take the issue of sexual misconduct very seriously. But one of the most valuable things that Diane Lance taught me years ago was that we have to call things what they really are. And for the ease of this conversation and the information that I shared back that I hope has been shared with the caucus, is there is sexual harassment and discrimination, or harassment and discrimination of any kind, and that's one lane. And that is absolutely the purview of human resources. That's the HR lane. And then there is sexual assault, and that is criminal. That's a different lane that is outside of traditional human resource and certainly Metro HR's purview. So with regard to sexual harassment and discrimination, as Ms. Morante outlined, as Deputy Chief outlined, there are clear policies and procedures for all Metro employees that want to report sexual harassment or discrimination at the workplace. I think we should all agree and at least acknowledge, because some of these things are legally required, that there is not, while it might be easier to have one place to report, lots of these situations are not a one-size-fits-all. So we do have several different places that an individual can report, because we do not want to limit an alleged victim's ability to come forward. As it was outlined by Deputy Chief and Ms. Morante, similar for all Metro HR departments, an employee that's facing discrimination or harassment in the Metro workplace has the right to go any of these places. So they're not necessarily speaking to all these places. They have the right to come forward and report to any of the places. It can be their supervisor, or they can go to their department's HR director, or they can come to Metro Human Resources directly, or they can go to the Metro Human Relations Commission, or the Tennessee Human Relations Commission, or the EEOC. So, and there are a number of those, especially with Tennessee Human Relations, Metro Human Relations, and EEOC. Those are legally required. We want to make sure, and again, we don't want to limit, as long as we make somebody comfortable enough that they want to disclose this and we can assist them, getting into any of these categories is really paramount, because we know that this is something that is underreported likely. I'll be honest with you, you've heard a lot from the police department. Most of our Metro departments, if an employee presents either to their supervisor or to their department HR, they typically, given the nature of sexual harassment or discrimination, typically will reach out to Metro Human Resources for our assistance. And we also have an employee relations team that then will conduct an independent third-party investigation with regard to the harassment or discrimination claim. So we're prepared to do that. We do that on a regular basis for any department that needs us. Many departments do utilize that. Some of the specialized functions that the police department has also makes them uniquely qualified to conduct their own, should an employee need to come to, for example, OPA. I should also mention that for all Metro employees, as mentioned by the police department, and is consistent across all of Metro government. There are lots of different legal parameters that require that Metro employees be trained on sexual harassment prevention, including the Metro Code, executive orders, et cetera. And those have been expanded in the past several years to include board and commission members, as well as elected officials and council members. So while council members and board and commission members may see a more condensed version, please know that the Metro employee version of sexual harassment prevention and reporting is much more comprehensive. We also have two of those, and this is very important. We have one that's a training that's required, by the way, both of these every 4 years for all Metro employees. The first training is for every Metro employee, and that is going to be sexual harassment prevention and reporting. Every employee needs to know if they are facing this themselves, how they can try to empower themselves to stop it, and where to go to report it. So we train every Metro employee on that component. The secondary training that we offer is for supervisors. We want to empower supervisors, as Ms. Moranti also indicated. There is some responsibility of the supervisor if somebody does disclose to them that they faced a sexual harassment claim or discrimination, what they should do with it. So we have a separate training for all Metro supervisors on what to do if somebody does come to them that works for them and is facing one of these and discloses and reports to them, so that they have additional support and resources to know how to react, how to believe, and what to do. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew there are clear policies and procedures. All of these are outlined in civil service rules. The police department is going to use consistent policies within that, customized to fit their own, but they've got to make sure that all of those would be in accordance with civil service rules. And then the education component that continues on an ongoing basis. I will say we haven't had this situation happen often, but one of the other trainings we've also rolled out with the Office of Family Safety in the past couple of years is domestic violence in the workplace training. And it's been a really effective tool in partnership with the Office of Family Safety. We have had a few employees that have faced that situation, for which the Office of Family Safety has been a really great victim support. So just know that if an employee, even though once you cross the line of harassment and discrimination, and we go into something that's going to be more of a sexual assault, if any employee were to come forward and we were to be made aware of it, we would immediately help and support them through the right process with the Office of Family Safety and other appropriate parties like MNPD. The Office of Family Safety has given tremendous support in the situations we've had with domestic violence, and we want to make sure our employees, no matter whether they're facing the sexual assault in the workplace, outside the workplace, with a coworker, or somebody else in their life, we want to make sure that those people are getting the resources and help they need, even if it's outside of Metro HR. So we are very prepared and comfortable of going there. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of those with regard to sexual assault, but that's the overall process. And I'm certainly, Mike and I are both here to answer questions should anybody have them.
Thank you for that explanation. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hall, thank you so much for sharing that information. I think, last I did the training for council, and I think we're all, as a Women's Caucus, finding this so very valuable to understand what the pathways are, what the resources are, because as council members, as you can hear from Ms. Hancock and others, we are often contacted when employees are afraid or frustrated by the system, or they tried one path and that didn't work. And so I think you and I have discussed particular to Public Works, where there was an employee who was concerned that the HR representative there was, maybe very friendly with the person that she was concerned about or wanting to report. And so, in that case, then that would not be the best person to whom she should report this, right? So she should then go directly to HR. But I guess what I'm wondering is, I feel like often there are folks who they're kind of on this threshold of harassment and assault, or, again, I'm not suggesting that assault would be minor, but, things that are in the workplace, and I think what I hear from women is, a fear somewhat about reporting that, of telling, supervisors who are in many departments like Metro Police or Public Works are in the majority male. And, will he understand, and what will that mean? And if I tell this person, will that person find out anyway? And really understanding what the duty is of the HR person, whether or not to hold that in confidence and so forth. So, whether it's MNPD or larger departments, I don't dispute that folks are getting this training, but I do wonder, kind of a few years in, when it happens to you or it happens to a colleague, I still sense there's a little, not a little, but just kind of, it's almost like you feel like you need somebody that's kind of like a navigator, that somebody, I understand there's multiple reporting places, but I still sense from people with whom I've spoken that it's hard to figure out what's the best path, right? Like feeling like, oh, I probably shouldn't go to my HR person, or I don't want to go there because I feel like, and sometimes these are just perceptions, right? And I'm not saying but perception matters. And so I feel like, to Ms. Hall's point about underreporting, so Ms. Hall, can you kind of speak to, in the context of training, or what, kind of is ongoing, I don't know, just that kind of initial step of that woman feeling like, okay, that was really out of bounds, and that was harassment. And then, you feel nervous over time, you don't report it, then you start to second guess yourself, then you feel resentful that you didn't say anything, then you see it happening to other women. Like, I just feel like people get a little stuck at the start, so to speak. And I don't know if you can speak to what you're doing to help in that regard.
Sure. I'll be honest with you. We are trying to track trends, especially because there's so many multiple reporting channels. I will say that typically, if it goes to a channel equal to or bigger than Metro HR, so Metro Human Relations, Tennessee Human Relations, they typically don't go one of those two places. Those are paths that are available. Typically, I see them going to the EEOC or coming, I think, to your point, directly to Metro Human Resources. If they file an official complaint with the EEOC, we're made aware of it. So at least in Metro HR, so that we're aware. And I think, to your point, tracking those trends so we know, do we need additional education about, how do we improve trainings to make sure people understand that coming forward is not going to have, we put all of this in our trainings, like no retaliation towards witnesses or anybody bringing forward a complaint. And I think for the most part, it doesn't necessarily, I think for all the reasons, all the complicated reasons, we'll never force anybody to have to file a complaint with us. What we do is we also want to be a confidential source for people to reach out and talk through some of those complicated matters. And our employee relations team is prepared to do that with anyone. Just because I know a lot of this has come up as a result of Ms. McLean and Silent No Longer. We actually directly reached out to her. She had Mr. Taylor's direct line following some of the information that was shared with the mayor's office. The information was very concerning. And while it did use the term sexual harassment, most of what we read was beyond sexual harassment. It was criminal in nature, in our opinion. I think, to Ms. Morante's point, there is very little information for which anyone could follow up following that. So because most of the information contained within it was not necessarily harassment or discrimination and outside of our lane, we really didn't have, and the claims were in such a way that you couldn't glean and we couldn't investigate anything beyond that. Plus, I felt like a lot of this was outside of our purview. We did end up independently reaching out to Ms. McLean. Mr. Taylor did directly with one of our employee relations specialists, spoke with her and had a very productive conversation. We helped her to craft a communication to go out to anybody who's in her population, to let them know that they have a right to come talk to us, that just to even explore what any kind of harassment or discrimination investigation could look like, and that is for current or former employees. So we've done some proactive work with Ms. McLean, but to date have not heard back from Ms. McLean or any of the individuals from Silent No Longer taking us up on the offer to discuss or even bring things forward. So I know there's a lot of stuff. I'm probably speaking a little bit off cuff, but I know there's a lot of things that people are wanting to discuss as part of this meeting. But I think, Councilmember Henderson, to your point, a lot of this is really focusing on watching trends of where people are reporting, what kinds of things they're reporting, and then making sure that we're continuing to adapt our training and make sure that people understand that just having a conversation to help them better understand paths, understand what they experienced, that it's not okay, and then help to empower them on a path that's most appropriate is really our best effort.
Well, and I appreciate that. Just by quick follow-up, I think,
very quick.
Shannon, I think because, we, several of us women of the council, know you as our former clerk, and we know you're a great person with good empathy and a great manager. But there are women all throughout Metro who don't know you. They don't know who works in HR necessarily. And I think sometimes when there are so many different pathways, I do feel like kind of external to departments and all the politics and the issues there as to promotion and work assignment. And, I do think it's important in HR that women know that there's somebody there with whom they can speak. And it may just be to kind of just verbally process and talk through something. So, I feel like there needs to be kind of a central place in HR that, you don't just feel like you're going to call over there and you're going to get routed to somebody so I think giving that a little bit more of a face or a clear path would be helpful to women. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Benedict, is your hand up anew, or is that left over from before?
It's new, and I can wait if you want me to. Okay, thank you.
But if you would make it quick, we're beginning to run long, so thank you.
I will make it quick because Councilwoman Henderson just hit on a lot of things. I just want to reiterate the amount of courage that it takes, whether you're a woman or a man, to step forward when something has happened to you. It takes a tremendous amount of courage. It's very easy to brush it to the side and say, I must have been responsible for making that happen. It must be my fault that I've done something that, not that a wrong has actually been done to me. So I want to first say that I especially believe that's a mindset that women often have. I did want to point out the Office of Family Safety is in the same building, is that correct, of the MNPD headquarters? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to think about that. Sorry. I just want to think about that from the perspective of if I have been assaulted, if I need to go a criminal route, if I need to go through the Office of Family Safety, I want to be thinking about it when I pull into that parking lot in my civilian clothes and walk in. Who around me is going to know that I'm a cop, and why am I walking into that office? So I just, I want to be thinking about those kinds of things as we do this. And then the last thought that I have, and I don't need an answer on it, maybe an answer is easy, but how often do we do the sexual harassment training, or quite frankly, any type of training? Do we do it just the one time when they start? Do we do it on an annual basis? What is the requirement that we have there? Because I think making sure this remains front of mind, no matter the type of discriminatory behavior it is. I think it's important that we make sure we're constantly by, an annual basis, refreshing, hey, this still matters. We taught you this then. We want to reiterate it. It matters. So thank you, Chair. That's all I've got. Appreciate the extra.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes, Director Hall, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I can answer it really quick. Councilmember Benedict, just so you know, the training, both sexual harassment prevention for all employees and for supervisors, is at least once every 4 years. Typically, it has been, it can obviously be taken more often, but I will say we have been able to leverage for the first time an online learning management system at Metro, and it is one of the greatest gifts we have received in the past year. This allows us to migrate some of that content online that allows people to have immediate access anytime when they log in. So it is integrated with the new R12 system, but it's something that we are leveraging more often. I will say that for sexual harassment prevention for supervisors, we typically like that to be more of an interactive course so that supervisors understand what they really could hear and help to troubleshoot with them. So we're going to have a little bit more high touch there as well. But in addition to the answer is at least every 4 years. I expect that to pick up more because now it is at everyone's fingertips and disposal now that we've gone to an online learning management system.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful information. Councilmember Hauser.
Yes, and I had to walk away for a moment, so I hope you haven't already answered this question. But walk me through the timeline from an employee file a complaint to when the person that I filed the complaint against is notified, and am I notified before they're notified? They're going to be notified. And during that time frame, are we still working together? So I want to know what the notification is on both sides, and what, once you file the complaint, where is your status? Are you still working for this person until it goes before a board? Or are you put in some other position, or are you both put on administrative leave, or what happens?
Director Hall?
So I would say it probably depends on the place that they go to report. I'm happy to speak to kind of in general the Metro HR approach. If someone were to report to us, I think a couple of things. One, when someone comes and discloses and wants to file a harassment or discrimination complaint, we typically will then immediately start working with our employee relations team to start an investigation. Part of that is a fact-finding review, and we will interview any of the people that the person who is making the claim has suggested is a good person to talk to. We'll look at any others that seem to make sense within that domain, if that should also be included. And I'll be honest with you, typically speaking, when someone, an accused is coming into our office, we're not necessarily giving them a heads up as to why they're coming into the office. We are not necessarily sharing back the timing by which we're interviewing people, but we are moving quickly. When someone presents a report of sexual harassment, we want to move as quickly as we can and as thoroughly as we can towards helping to gather appropriate facts, substantiate any evidence, anything that we can get, and then produce a report. It would probably depend on the nature of the dynamic. It's not always a supervisor who has harassed. So it probably would depend the nature and severity of the harassment or discrimination, how often it's occurring, to what the dynamic is between the employees, because they may be colleagues that see each other on a regular basis or not. And if we think that there's some reason why the severity or the nature of this warrants some alternative placement or accommodation while we're investigating, we would probably work directly confidentially with the department head to assess that need.
Okay.
But I can't speak to the other reporting.
That could be a real challenge if I got to go back to work and I know that my boss knows I just filed something, and now for however many days or weeks or months, we got to keep working together. That would be a pretty uncomfortable, at least, if not scary situation.
Good point. And that may be one of the issues we want to try to find a better solution for. Any other questions?
This is Mike Taylor. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, to the question about movement, it actually depends on the department, the size, but as Ms. Hall, Shannon Hall said, usually we work well with the department. And if that is a situation where a employee, whether male or female, is in direct line and based on the nature of the complaint, we do work with that department to get probably the alleged harasser reassigned. In rare cases, we do try to move the complainant as long as it's a equal level position and is not seen as retaliation. And that's one of the things we want to avoid, retaliation and the appearance of retaliation. So that's on a case-by-case basis.
Great. Thank you for adding that information. Councilmember Hauser, any more questions? We are running short on time.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Thank you. No, that's a good question. Councilmember Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. And I apologize. I came in late, so I might have missed this answer. But just one follow-up to Ms. Hall and Mr. Taylor. If the person is reassigned, is that done prior to the investigation or during the investigation? If there is an investigation being conducted on a sexual harassment claim, you mentioned that either the victim or the defendant would be reassigned. Is that done prior to the investigation?
It depends on the nature and the department. Normally, HR would be notified when we're asked to conduct an investigation. We'll work with that HR person in the department. Usually the department, they know what the skill sets and the actual position the person has. And if it's in direct supervision, that's usually up to the department. If we work in conjunction with that department, and we realize that, hey, this is a situation, because we've had some of those to happen, where it would be best to separate the employees. And if it was not, they were not able to separate, then we have the administrative leave with pay provision that it may be required that alleged harasser to be placed on admin leave with pay. And that depends on the flexibility within that department to either move them temporarily to another area, or if they cannot, to use administrative leave with pay. So it varies depending on the situation, and each situation is varied and different.
Thank you for that. And my second question is for Ms. Morante or Ms. Lockley. I'm not sure, you all may have addressed this before I came on, but Ms. Hall stated that there is not an active investigation within Metro HR for the sexual harassment claims identified or suggested in the Silent No Longer report. Is there an active investigation through Metro, with Metro, or TBI? Can someone speak to that?
I can speak to that. With regard to Captain Reinbold, the TBI was asked to do the investigation, so OPA is not involved with that. Now, I know I have from the TBI that they completed their investigation some time ago, and that report is with General Funk. So if you wish to know the status, that's where. We investigated two of the other ones and found them where we could discern enough information to do an investigation, and found those to be completely false. In addition, there was another one which alleged that a captain was having sexual relationship on duty with a female officer. We just finished that investigation and found that captain was having a consensual sexual relationship with the officer. They did not have sexual relations when either of them were on duty. It was consensual, and he was not her supervisor. So the rest of the allegations, we just don't have enough specifics to investigate from Ms. McLean.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. And we did talk about that a little bit more, Councilmember Gamble, so I'll fill you in more if you have other questions on stuff we have talked about already.
I'm happy to take phone calls too.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Morante.
Yes, anytime.
Thank you. I had promised Ms. Lance that we would not subject her to a 2.5-hour meeting. So I know that we've got two council members that have questions that have already asked questions. So if y'all don't mind holding your thoughts until I let Diane Lance give us information about how her office fits in with all this. And then I'll recognize you first when we come back, because she may have relevant answers for some of your questions as well. So thank you for sticking with us, and you are now recognized. I appreciate it.
Sure, of course. I'm here as long as you need me. I downed some Triscuits while y'all were talking, so it's not the good day to skip lunch. But again, I'm Diane Lance. I'm the department head for Metro's Office of Family Safety, and I really appreciate you, Council Lady Allen and Stiles, for reaching out to our department to talk about this, and had a great conversation with Shannon. Shannon Hall. I've never seen a better HR director than we have in Shannon, and our department certainly leans on her so often, and all of her amazing staff. My history real fast. I mean, I've worked with Deputy Chief Loki when she was in the Domestic Violence Division, and Kathy Morante. We were both prosecutors in the DA's office. So really happy to hear from everyone, a lot of women that I really respect. So as you all know, our department has 36 people. A good number of our staff are frontline advocates who work with victims of interpersonal violence. So we define interpersonal violence as victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, child abuse, and elder abuse. And what our office really functions to do is to improve interpersonal violence victim safety and offender accountability. So you can't really have one without the other in many cases. And we manage both of our family justice centers. We have the Gene Crow Advocacy Center, which is a family safety center in our criminal courthouse, the Gene Crow Advocacy Center. And then we also have our community-based family justice center, the Family Safety Center on Murfreesboro Pike. That is the one connected to the headquarters. I think it's really important to note that those buildings were arranged very purposefully, so they may appear to be connected, but they have very separate entrances. A lot of our clients don't want to interact with police necessarily, and so we wanted to be really sensitive to that. And so our entrance is on the back, way at the other end, further south on Murfreesboro Pike, and the police entrance is way north on the road on that end on the front. And we are really pretty much only connected underground. So that's kind of what we do. And we have special ways that we can have people come into the building where they don't even have to walk through the building and see anyone. We built one special room that has extra privacy than any other room in the building, and has its own entrance. So we have some things that help with one of those concerns I would have expressed. The other thing that we do is we manage our on-site partners, which is a lot of nonprofits, which does include the Sexual Assault Center, who often has someone on site at the Family Safety Center during normal working hours. So our expertise, we cross over in a lot of areas, but really our special sauce is immediate crisis intervention. We work with victims who it has just happened. Police bring them from the scene with their children directly to us, and it's a lot of chaos. Injuries, traumatized children, and so we are really good at getting in there with trauma, reducing trauma, and providing a confidential space to talk to an advocate. And confidentiality is something I just want to stress. It's been brought up a lot here. Our work with clients is confidential. It is required under state law. There is a state statute that the clients who seek help from a family safety center, it's a statewide concept, a family safety center, those times with advocates are confidential. So that's a great thing that we have. It's been mentioned about we do have the employee training around domestic violence. And I know we're not talking necessarily about domestic violence right now, but what we do is for any Metro employee that needs our help, needs to talk to an advocate, we have this, we call it the anonymizer. We have, I think it's 5 or 7 questions about them, but not really anything identifying to an outsider, like what is, the 3rd letter of your last name, what's the 2nd digit in your cell phone number, and all those things come together to create a code for that Metro employee, so they're not in our database under their actual name, because that's a barrier for Metro employees. They think that we're all under one system and their boss can find out their information, or their intimate partner that might also work within Metro. So we make sure to keep that very anonymous. So when that client, that Metro employee comes back, they are really the only one that can help us access their quote file. We don't keep a lot of information on people, but they are the only ones. They have to give us those answers to those 5 questions again for us to access their information. Underlying everything we do is starting by believing. We start by believing, and we make sure everyone knows that they are not alone. Those are the 2 most important things you can do with any victim of trauma or any victim of a crime or abuse, is to make sure they know they are not alone and that they are believed. You can get rid of a lot of problems down the road if the first people they interact with handle what they've disclosed that way. No victim of crime and abuse forgets how the first person they told responded. It just gets imprinted really deep in there. So you've got to have the right person talking to them. Not everyone wants transparency and accountability, though. And I feel like that's been hinted at a lot from what I've been listening to. So, it's a process to get there. There's a feeling out period. What's going to happen? It's very similar with domestic violence victims. One of the great things about us being there is they don't have to necessarily pick up the phone and call 911. I pick up the phone and I call 911, I'm triggering a lot of responses. It's like I've sent an invitation to our whole law enforcement and criminal justice system to come into my world. When I was a prosecutor, I thought that was a great thing. Now with maturity and age on me, I realized that there's this really important before phase for some people, a lot of people, where they need to figure out what they want to do. Do they want the world to know? Do they want others around them to know? Do they want their offender accountable right then? And what are the consequences of that? And there's this sorting out stage, and it's a process. And so it's common, and that process is common and oftentimes necessary when the victim knows their offender. Again, just like in domestic violence, just like in these cases we're talking about, when the victim knows their offender, you've got a different beast. I love that someone used the word navigator. That's a word we use all the time. So our law enforcement and criminal justice systems are complicated. Figuring out which nonprofits have what you need is complicated. And we're kind of the hub of that wheel, especially in domestic violence and sexual assault. I'm not talking about the workplace, but outside the workplace. That's kind of what we do. Our specialist house, we navigate through the system. We actually have employees we call navigators that help do that. And that is important. And the navigation needs to be confidential. It needs to assist with knowing your options. The consequences of those options are very important. And again, of course, you need to be believed. That's sort of kind of all I wanted to say. Just, there is a ramping in process. Preserving information is important. So let's say someone comes to us and tells us something and they're in our anonymizer, and then they really don't want to do anything, or they don't do anything for a year down the road. Well, because they talked to someone early on, that information can still be there. I mean, we hear it in some of our more public things. Who did they tell back then when they were in high school? That's important. Who did you tell? It makes it more believable. It gives more information. The details are better. So having a disclosure point of contact that is confidential helps with making sure that you have that information right then and there, closer to when it happened. So obviously, I defer to all these experts. We are happy to help. If anyone needs us in any way, we're happy to contribute whatever's needed.
Thank you. That's great information to kind of fill this out. And it almost sounds to me like we need the navigator equivalent for just the sexual harassment piece of it that has been so carefully worked out for the sexual assault. So that was my opinion. I will now be back to council members who have waited patiently. Council members.
Let me just say with confidentiality, because that will make a difference.
And that's huge. I think that's a really big thing. And I think that's part of what the stumbling block is that Councilmember Henderson was referring to. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everyone. This has been very informative. I wanted to go back to a couple of things. I think just listening to the whole thing, it also reminded me of a case that I was actually involved with Metro. Of somebody that had actually come forward a couple of years back and make allegations about being harassed on the job. The case went to all the departments, went to, I think he ended up even in EOC with the Metro Human Rights Commission and everywhere. But at the end of the day, she was never transferred from that department. I remember even calling and talking to Mr. Taylor myself. The option that she had was that she could apply for a new job when it's open. And she was worried that if she did that, she might lose the continuity of her services that she's had in the job that she was in. I say all of that to be able to say that when people do come forward, sometimes, it could be a perception that they're at risk. It could be they felt something happened to them. And if after the investigation it's decided that no, it's not worthy of investigation or it's not something that needs to go forward, I still think something needs to be done to that person that came forward or done with them. I heard in this conversation that the decision to transfer the complainer rests solely on the department, and that there's no policy that says that when somebody is complaining or there's an investigation going forward that they have to be moved. I think that is part of the problem, because if people feel like no matter what they do, because you don't know where it will go. I'm not saying that every complaint means somebody is guilty. Sometimes it will, but sometimes it's just the way the person made you feel. And if you came forward and said something like that and nothing happened, it could be why many people may not feel comfortable coming up. And I think that we need to look at that policy on how we deal with, I think about 2 or 3 people already asked the question about relocating people. Is there retaliation? Is there perception of retaliation? How do we make sure that all of that is addressed? This was a couple of years back. I'm sure things are changing, and a lot is before Ms. Shannon became HR. But I think that's part of the things that I'm hearing in some of these conversations that we've had that I see as troublesome in terms of somebody coming forward. What is their relationship to their job? And how do we, especially if the department comes back or HR, anybody comes back and said the allegation is pointless, right? Or that they cannot go after the perpetrator because there's nothing to go after, which is possible, but there's still a perceived feeling to the person that came forward that might still make the workplace not a very safe place for them to work in. And I hope that as we're continuing this conversation that we are thinking about that, and I don't know, I'll leave it to all the experts on how that is done, but I hope that that's something that we may have to look at in terms of who makes a decision to transfer. Should we leave it to the department? Should that be something HR automatically does? Should there be a criteria for dealing with that? And so just wanted to bring that in and share that experience that I had. The person ended up staying and complained every day for so many years. At the time, it was just her, so it wasn't as rampant as this. So I'm not saying all the allegations are true. I'm not saying they're all false, but I'm saying that we need to look in terms of the perspective of the person complaining too sometimes, and how they feel. So, but thank you all so much. This has been very informative, and thanks for taking the time to come talk to us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ms. Hall, Mr. Taylor, do you have anything to, Mr. Taylor?
Taylor, if I may reply. I'm familiar with that incident that you mentioned. However, it's on a case-by-case basis, and as far as transfer, we do have civil service rules, and in those cases where we have a civil service employee, it is very important that we make sure that, number one, the alleged behavior stops. If we can prove that their behavior existed, we take every effort to make sure that report is communicated to that department, and then it's up to that department head to take action. Now, in regard to transfers, number one, that is up to that department. If they can move someone internally and to get them out of the situation, that is something that we are an advocate for. As far as transfers between other departments, it depends on if there's a position, if it's the same classification, if the person meets the minimum qualifications. So it's not always as simple as if someone in X department has faced, alleged harassment and want to transfer to another department. There is a separate process for that, and that is an agreement between the two department heads. If either one has a similar position and that employee meets the minimum qualifications. One thing that we can't do is just randomly move employees around, and especially force another department to take an employee if they do not have the position or the person does not meet the minimum requirements. So a lot of things are taken into consideration. And in the situation that you refer to, that was something totally different. The outcome was not, although the employee was not moved, we think the issue was resolved. And as a result of that, it wasn't a Metro employee, it was a vendor. That person we recommended, we found out through our investigation, had not gone through sexual harassment training through their employer, and that was one of the recommendations, that that employee or that vendor could not come on Metro property until they were trained, and the behavior did stop. But, you know, that's just, you know, transferring. It's a lot more complicated than just saying, hey, we can move you to from one department to another if you make the allegation. And number one, it has to be founded. And the main thing that we try to do is make sure that the behavior stops, especially if it is founded, you know, or even if it's unfounded, you know, work with that department to say, you know, what can we do better? Can we make sure, again, retaliation does not occur, and put all employees in the best light possible?
Great. Thank you for answering that. Councilmember Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would really like to say a very big thank you to Ms. Lance. As someone who has worked both for the Sexual Assault Center before it was called that and for the Crisis Intervention Center, I really know how important that first face is for people who are experienced trauma or are in crisis, and what you do to empower people to decide when they are ready to move forward with whatever next steps they choose to take is so important. So I really appreciate what you're doing. My questions, though, actually either go to Ms. Morantes or Ms. Hall. I thought that I heard that you said that something could go to a third-party investigator, and I was just wondering who decides if something is investigated by a third-party investigator and what that process looks like?
Ms. Morante?
Well, in the police department, the determination is made by myself, or if someone will request an investigation, and we will look at it and see if it's the kind of investigation we would do. So, I mean, this is after someone has either already come forward to make a complaint, or we've received a complaint about actions from a third party. So this is past the situation where somebody has, you know, this is where someone has decided that they want a complaint investigated. And at that point, it would come either to Metro, or excuse me, to police HR or to OPA. And generally OPA will do those investigations where, you know, it's a bigger investigation, it's a serious investigation, which most sexual harassment cases will be, and numerous people have to be interviewed. And that just happens usually between the HR director and myself talking about it, or the chief and I talking about it. So generally, it's going to be done within OPA when we have an allegation of the type that we're talking about here.
So there's no like actual like criterion that's a process that you follow? It's more like a judgment call?
Well, we do have in our, and I'll go ahead and, you know, send this to everybody. We have in the manual the type of investigations that OPA does, because we do a lot of things that are not obviously sexual harassment. And it's so you know, we do have criteria, but generally it's going to be anything that involves a lengthier investigation, or it's a very serious charge. And again, sexual harassment, those kinds of things are going to be serious. But again, we do a lot of types of, and, you know, get a lot of complaints that are less serious that would then be done by the precinct. That doesn't involve the ones that we're doing here. So generally, we're going to do it in the police department when there's that kind of an allegation.
Thank you. And my final question is, I just wondered if sexual assault cases are investigated the same as other violent crime is investigated, because I feel like it, in terms of changing the stigma of sexual assault, and even the option of retaliation on some level, that if we started treating sexual assault as a violent crime, like equal to other violent crimes, it could help remove some of that stigma. And I just wondered if there's a different way that we handle that. I understand there is a sensitivity towards victims and what we need to do there, but just in terms of the crime itself, calling it out for what it is, a violent crime that needs to be investigated and treated as a standard violent crime.
I agree with you 100%. And to be clear, if it's a sexual assault, if it's something that is a crime, OPA will do its investigation, but it's administrative only. If we hear about it before our criminal division hears about it, we immediately report it to them. So it is being dealt with as a crime, as a sexual assault, as a serious crime, crime by our sex offense division. Those detectives are going to go and investigate it to look at making the case for arrest or actually doing the arrest. OPA does something separate, which is the administrative investigation. But again, on more than one occasion, we have gotten that information and realized that it has not been reported as a crime, and we immediately make sure that our criminal detectives on the criminal side know about it and do an investigation.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Hauser.
Thank you. For 2 years, when I was in Chattanooga, I volunteered as a personal advocate at the Sexual Assault Center. And that Sexual Assault Center offered, I think, maybe more extensive services than the local one does. We actually had a clinic there, and we were the first stop for somebody that had been sexually assaulted, unless they actually needed emergency room treatment. They came to us. And so as a personal advocate, I held many hands as they were doing the rape kits and talked with the policemen, with the families, with the victim, with everyone, and coordinated all of that. And then, the next day the professionals would take over. But one of the things that I wondered is, how is all that handled now? If I am a victim, do I have to go call the police first or go to the hospital? Because I don't think the Sexual Assault Center here actually has a place for people to come. We were trying to be a one-stop shop. And one of the things that was really great is our local police had a special division that had been really trained on how to handle our victims as victims and not as if they were criminals. And I know one time, all of our trained officers had been called away, and the only person that was available was an officer that had not received this extensive training, and actually was a woman, and I wanted to knock her out because she was treating my victim like she had done something wrong, and none of the other officers that had been trained properly did that. And I'd like to know to what extent we have specially trained officers that know how to properly handle victims so that in that first hour or two, which is what is going to impact their entire lifelong healing process, is how you are treated that first hour or two. So it's really, really critical. Can you speak to how our officers, do we have a special division? How does all that interaction happen? How is the victim handled?
Okay, good question. It's a little off topic from the sexual harassment within Metro employees, but I think Commander Loki, Chief Loki could answer that one. And then
actually, can I answer about the sexual assault exams?
Sure, go back to that.
All right, so the first part of your question, the Sexual Assault Center, recently our office worked hard with the Sexual Assault Center to make sure that victims of sexual assault had a choice in where they receive their sexual assault exam. So as a result of that team that we lead with them, you can get your sexual assault exam at a variety of hospitals now in Nashville, Davidson County, and outside Davidson County, and now at the Sexual Assault Center, who raised all the money for their sexual assault clinic, which is great. So we do have this wonderful non-hospital location. Also, the Family Safety Center does have a clinic. When there is a need for numbers for that clinic to provide sexual assault exams, we will be able to do that. We're not there yet. I know you will want to talk about the detectives that work on these cases. I will just put my 2 cents in that I always think you cannot get enough training on how to interact with victims of sexual assault, child and adult, and trafficking victims. And that's an area I'd love to discuss at another time.
Thank you.
That may be a whole other meeting. Thank you for bringing that up. Chief Loki, is there anything you want to add to that?
You know, we receive training yearly on sexual abuse. We also have a sex abuse unit. And we've got good quality detectives there. They're very compassionate and they care very much. I love the idea of what Diane just brought up. I think that's a great opportunity, something we need to explore. I think tonight we learned that there's always something more we can do and something that we can do better. And I applaud everybody for wanting to have this conversation. It's a new day. We need to treat these issues much more important than we have.
Thank you. I think that wraps everything up. We have kept our guests much longer than I promised to, and I appreciate y'all sticking with us. So I would say to everybody, give a big hand to Chief Loki, to Director Morante, to Director Hall, and to Director Lance. Y'all have provided us with a lot of information that may be out there, but it's just not easy to find. So this has been a great education, and we will give you the rest of your evening back. I would ask the council members to stick with me for just a second, and let's discuss whether we want to try to keep hashing on this document or do it online. So we'll let you get to your Triscuits and dinner. Thank you so much.
And please note, if this council would like a tour of the Family Safety Center, we can do it virtually, and we'd be happy to share all the services that we have.
Great. We would love to do that tour. Thank y'all for all you do and for spending this hour and a half with us. It's been really great.
Thank you.
All right, ladies, we have it's been an hour and a half already this is really important information, so I appreciate everyone, just bringing attention to this important subject and then being willing to ask a whole lot of important questions. We have a document that I think reflects some of what we know, but I think we've learned some stuff tonight that may make us want to make changes to a couple of the sentences in there. So I would entertain suggestions for how y'all think we could move forward in a expeditious fashion, because I knew we want to get a document out while it's still relevant, but I think we want it to be accurate as well. So thoughts on whether we want to spend another amount of time editing now, or if we want to go back to letting people send edits to Rosie and then Councilmember Stiles and Henderson can compile those suggestions. I see Councilmember Gamble raising your hand. You're recognized, Councilmember Gamble.
Thank you, Chairs, Councilwoman Gamble. And I think in light of hearing the information presented today, there are some changes that are needed, some accuracies that needed or inaccuracies that need to be clear up in the statement, particularly as it relates to, I'm sorry, let me take off this other meeting. Okay, I'm sorry about that. As it relates to the policies and procedures for Metro HR in particular, and the statements of what they must do. I think there are some suggestions that are appropriate that we might include as it relates to some of the ideas that Ms. Lance and the Office of Family Safety can provide in regards to making sure that victims aren't afraid to come forward because of retaliation and other things. So we could suggest those, but to say that there aren't any procedures or trainings or everything is inaccurate, and we need to change that. Other than that, I think we definitely should continue to assert that we take accusations very seriously and support anyone who comes forward with them. And we believe that every Metro employee deserves a safe place free of harassment. But some of the accusations or about or some of the assertions that in regards to reporting allegation, the current procedures for reporting investigation allegations are ambiguous and inconsistent. Some of that is just not accurate. So, I mean, I think we can't do it right now over this meeting, but maybe we can all go back. And I think there were also some other edits or changes that weren't ever made to the document as well. So somebody else might want to speak to that, but we probably need to do it offline.
Thank you. I think that's a good suggestion. I would also suggest what I heard tonight was just ways to create more possibilities for both the navigator anonymity in ways to move forward. I think just to reduce the fear of reporting, and I think different departments have different tools that may be useful. If there's a way to refer to that as room for improvement, I think that's something that came out repeatedly. So what I would suggest is that Rosie and Councilmember Stiles, if y'all can send out what the current version of the document is, and if people can take, because I would ask if people can within the next day or two work on edits and get those back to Rosie. And is Rosie on this call as I'm giving her assignments?
She is not, but I'm taking notes. I'll
okay,
let
great.
her know.
Let her know we volunteered her. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. So we'll try to do that within the next 2 days and then send out a compiled version. Councilmember Stiles, I will let you continue to be the compiler since you've done that so deftly, if that's okay. And then we'll try to get that back out to people within the next 2 days, if that seems like an appropriate plan of action. Any objection to that plan of action? Seeing none, is there any other business this group should take care of before we adjourn? Okay, everybody knows their assignment. Thank y'all so much. I think this was really helpful, and I'm grateful to this group for being willing to take a stand on this and for taking the time to get educated, so that what we say, I think, is going to be of import and of high accuracy, and that's important. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and we will meet next at our regularly scheduled time. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.